The plasma storm that had raged across Kythera Prime for 6 months finally died to a whisper, leaving behind a silence that felt like the grave. Commander Alexis Corvin pressed her palm against the observation deck's reinforced titanium steel composite, watching debris fields drift past like metallic snow. 300 million colonists had called this system home. Now their atomized remains painted the void in streaks of ionized carbon and trace minerals. Ma'am, we're picking up movement on the outer perimeter. Lieutenant Voss Hannigan reported from the bridge communications ray. His voice carried the hollow tone of a man who'd watched too many worlds burn. 47 Velthari dreadnoughts dropping out of quantum fold. They're broadcasting sovereignty claims over all planetary bodies and resource extraction. Rights, Corvins, jaw tightened. The Velthari 8-foot-tall insectoid predators with chitinous exoskeletons and a hunger for territorial expansion that had consumed 17 human colonies in the past decade. They moved like locusts, strip mining entire systems before moving on to fresh prey. But this time, they made a critical miscalculation. They think we evacuated with the civilians, she murmured, watching the alien fleet spread into formation. Around Kythera's dying sun, the star itself pulsed with unstable energy, its corona reaching temperatures that would vaporize conventional vessels in seconds. Perfect camouflage for humanity's most classified weapon. Deep within the stellar core, the used Prometheus waited. The kilometers of hardened neutronium hull wrapped around experimental stellar core processors that converted raw nuclear plasma into pure kinetic energy. The carrier housed 12,000 crew members and a fighter complement that could turn asteroid belts into powder. For 8 months, they'd endured temperatures exceeding 50 million degrees Celsius. Their ship's revolutionary thermal displacement systems, channeling stellar energy into their weapons arrays. Signal from Admiral Kane, Hannigan announced. Operation Sunburst is authorized. All fighter squadrons to launch preparation. Corvin moved to her command console, fingers dancing across holographic displays. The Velthari had no idea what lurked in their newly claimed star. Their sensors couldn't penetrate the electromagnetic interference of Kythera's corona, couldn't detect the massive human war machine feeding on nuclear fire, like some ancient god of destruction. Commander, the aliens are deploying harvesting platforms around the 4th planet, reported Navigation Officer Ellen Avask. Looks like they're setting up for long-term occupation. Good, Corvin said coldly. Let them get comfortable. The bridge hummed with anticipation as crew members moved with practiced efficiency. In the fighter bays, pilots sailed themselves into their Wraith-class interceptor ships designed to operate in the vacuum of space, using technology reverse-engineered from captured alien vessels. Each fighter carried enough firepower to cripple a cruiser. Their pilots trained to survive in conditions that would kill most sentient species. Mum, we're detecting additional Velthari reinforcements, Vask reported. 96 ships total. Now, they're bringing in civilian transports, colony ships. Corvin's blood chilled. The bastards were planning to settle here permanently, to build their nest in the ashes of human civilization. She thought of the children who lived on Kythera Prime, their laughter silenced by alien weapons designed to cause maximum suffering before death. Admiral Kane wants confirmation on targeting priorities, Hannigan said. All of them, Corvin replied, her voice carrying the weight of 3 centuries of human rage. Every last ship that dares to orbit our star. The Prometheus shuddered as its stellar engines began drawing more energy from Kythera's core. In the depths of space, the Velthari continued their occupation, unaware that humanity's most terrible creation was about to emerge from the fire that birthed worlds. They had claimed the system, but they had never bothered to look inside the sun itself. Soon, they would learn the price of underestimating human ingenuity and human vengeance. Admiral Rathkane stood in the Prometheus's primary war room, cathedral of tactical displays and holographic projections that painted the Velthari fleet in stark crimson vectors. His cybernetic left arm, a souvenir from the siege of Europa Station, interfaced directly with the ship's targeting systems, feeding him real-time data on every enemy vessel orbiting their star. 43 minutes until optimal firing position, announced Tactical Officer Marcus Vex. The Velthari have established a perimeter defense grid around their colony transports. Standard Scorpion formation. They're expecting trouble from the outer system. Kane's augmented eye focused on the primary display, watching alien ships move with predatory grace through space that still reeked of human death. The Velthari had perfected the art of systematic extermination, their plasma weapons designed to cause maximum agony while keeping infrastructure intact for salvage. They were efficient killers, but they'd never faced humanity's willingness to weaponize the very forces of creation. "Launch the Phantom Squadron," he ordered. "Silent running protocols. I want them positioned behind the enemy's rear guard before we make our presence known." The Prometheus shuddered as 12 Wraith fighters ejected from concealed launch bays. Deep within the ship's superstructure, each pilot had volunteered for a mission with a 30% survival rate. Their ships, equipped with experimental stealth technology that rendered them invisible to conventional sensors. They would serve as humanity's first strike, surgical instruments designed to cripple enemy communications before the real battle began. Lieutenant Commander Zerino Mora led Phantom Squadron through the Corona's outer edge, her fighters' hull temperature reading 3,000 degrees Celsius. As they navigated streams of ionized hydrogen, the Wraith's thermal dampening system strained against the stellar environment, but held. Behind her, 11 other pilots maintained perfect formation, their ships ghost pale against the nuclear fire. Phantom leader to all units. She transmitted on encrypted channels. "Enemy communications hub identified. Velthari command vessel bearing 27 Mark IV. Prepare for synchronized strike on my mark." The Velthari dreadnought Kethmorian dominated the alien formation, its biomechanical hull bristling with weapon systems that had reduced entire planetary populations to ash. Inside its command center, War Prime Velthik studied holographic displays showing resource extraction projections, calculating how many human settlements they could construct from the raw materials of Kithara Prime. He never saw the 12 human fighters that emerged from the star's corona like demons materializing from hellfire. "Mark." No More's voice cut through the void. Phantom Squadron struck with surgical precision, their plasma torpedoes punching through the Kethmorian-esque communication arrays in brilliant flashes of vaporized metal. The dreadnought shields flared and collapsed under the coordinated assault, its quantum communication system severed in the span of heartbeats. War Prime Velthik's mandibles clicked in confusion as his ship's bridge erupted in alarms. Where did they come from? Scan the system perimeter. But there was no system perimeter to scan. The humans had emerged from inside the star itself, from a place no sane species would dare to venture. As Velthik tried to process this impossibility, the Prometheus began its emergence from Kithara's stellar core. The carrier burst from the star's corona like some primordial leviathan, its neutronium hull glowing white-hot with absorbed stellar energy. The kilometers of human engineering that had survived inside a nuclear furnace, fed by the very forces that powered civilizations. Its weapons arrays crackled with stored plasma, each cannon capable of liquefying asteroids. "This is Admiral Kane of the United Earth ship Prometheus." His voice boomed across all frequencies. "You have trespassed in human space. You have murdered human children. You have exactly 60 seconds to begin evacuation procedures before we demonstrate why our species evolved from apex predators." Velthik's compound eyes widened in disbelief. The humans had hidden the carrier inside a star. Inside a star, the thermal readings alone should have killed every organic component, melted every circuit, reduced the ship to constituent atoms. Yet there it was, emerging from nuclear fire like some mythological phoenix, its fighter bays already disgorging waves of interceptors. "All ships, attack formation." Velthik shrieked. "Destroy the human vessel." The first Velthari dreadnought to open fire learned why humanity had spent 3 centuries perfecting the art of warfare. The Prometheus's primary plasma cannon, a weapon that channeled the raw power of stellar fusion, answered with a beam that cut through the alien ship's hull like a blade through silk. The dreadnought exploded in a cascade of superheated metal and screaming atmosphere, its depth illuminating the void in colors that had no names. The battle for Kithara's system had begun, and the Velthari were about to discover that humans didn't just fight wars, they redefined the very concept of destruction. The void erupted into chaos as 96 Velthari warships converged on the Prometheus, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with bioluminescent threat displays that painted the darkness in sickly greens and purples. War Prime Velthik commanded his fleet from the bridge of his wounded flagship, ichor leaking from wounds where human weapons had carved through chitin and metal. "Deploy the harvester swarms," he commanded, his voice a chittering shriek of rage. "I want that human abomination torn apart molecule by molecule." From the belly of each Velthari vessel, clouds of smaller fighters emerged, living ships grown rather than built, their organic hulls capable of self-repair and equipped with weapons That fired concentrated acid designed to eat through any known armor. 10,000 harvester drones filled the space between the fleets, moving with the coordinated intelligence of a hive mind. Admiral Kane watched the approaching swarm through the Prometheus's tactical displays, his cybernetic arm calculating intercept vectors and casualty projections. The numbers weren't encouraging. Even with their technological advantages, the humans were outnumbered nearly 8 to 1. Launch all fighter squadrons, he ordered. Full assault pattern, and activate. The stellar collectors, I want every available erg of energy channeled to our weapons arrays. The carrier's fighter bays vomited forth 300 Wraith interceptors, their pilots screaming battle cries that echoed with the fury of a species that had learned to survive in the galaxy's most hostile environments. Squadron leader Dmitry Volkov led the charge, his fighters' plasma cannons already warming as they accelerated toward the enemy swarm. Remember your training, Volkov shouted over the comm. These bastards think we're soft because we build cities instead of hives. Show them what humans do when someone threatens our young. The first collision between human and Velthari fighters lit up the void, like a miniature star going nova. Wraith interceptors dove through clouds of harvester drones, their weapons tearing through organic holes that bled bioluminescent fluid into vacuum. But for every alien fighter destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. Their acid weapons eating through human armor with terrifying efficiency. Lieutenant Saravos felt her wraith shudder as acid projectiles ate through her port wing. Warning, klaxons screaming in her cockpit. A harvester drone latched onto her hull like some parasitic nightmare, its drilling appendages seeking her fighter's power core. She rolled inverted and triggered her ship's emergency plasma burst, incinerating the attacker in a flash of superheated gas. Phantom Squadron, this is Voss. I've got 3 drones on my 6 and my weapons are offline. Negative on the assist. Voss, came no more restrained reply. We're all swimming in them. Break for the carrier's defensive grid. But the Prometheus was fighting its own desperate battle. The Velthari dreadnoughts had formed a sphere around the human carrier, their massive plasma projectors hammering against shields that drew power directly from Kithara's stellar core. Each impact sent shockwaves through the ship's superstructure, killing crew members and damaging critical systems. Commander Corvin felt the deck plates buckle beneath her feet as another barrage struck their starboard shield generators. Damage. Report. Shields down to 60% and falling, Hannigan reported. Blood streaming from a head wound caused by an exploding console. We've lost 37 fighters and the enemy's bringing up their heavy units. Through the tactical display, Corvin watched in horror as the Velthari revealed their true strength. Massive bioships, each one the size of a small moon, were emerging from quantum fold points throughout the system. These were siege organisms, living creatures capable of consuming entire planets. Their digestive systems converted into weapons of mass destruction. My God, she whispered. They're not just here to colonize, they're here to reproduce. The largest of the bioships, a writhing mass of tentacles and weapon clusters that stretched for 50 kilometers, began broadcasting on all frequencies. The voice that emerged was ancient, filled with the wisdom of a species that had devoured civilizations for millions of years. Insignificant mammals. The brood mother's voice reverberated through space itself. You have delayed the inevitable. This system will birth the next generation of Velthari, and your flesh will nourish our young. Surrender now, and we will grant you the honor of serving as living incubators. Admiral Kane's response was to order the Prometheus's main batteries to focus fire on the bioship's primary neural cluster. The stellar core weapons punched through layers of organic armor, causing the creature to writhe in apparent agony. But the wounds were already healing. New tissue growing to replace what had been destroyed. Sir, Vex reported, his voice tight with fear. Our weapons aren't causing enough damage. That thing's regeneration rate is off the charts. Kane stared at the tactical display, watching his fighters die in the void while the Velthari pressed their advantage. They prepared for a quick strike, not a siege against bioweapons that could repair themselves faster than human technology could damage them. But humanity hadn't survived the galaxy's cruelest environments by knowing when to quit. Signal all ships, he said quietly, prepare for Protocol Omega. If we're going down, we're taking as many of these monsters with us as possible. The Prometheus began drawing power directly from Kithara's core, its hull glowing white hot as stellar energies built to critical levels. In the void around them, the Velthari fleet closed in for the kill, unaware that humans had one final, terrible card to play. Protocol Omega was humanity's most classified military directive, a last resort that violated 17 interstellar treaties and 3 fundamental laws of physics. As the Prometheus began converting its stellar core reactor into a controlled singularity, Admiral Kane felt the weight of 3 billion human souls, demanding justice for the death of Kithara Prime. Engineering, report. He barked into his comm unit, watching Velthari bioships creep closer through walls of dying human fighters. Chief Engineer Anya Volkov's voice crackled with static. A barely controlled terror, singularity formation. At 40%, Admiral, the containment field is holding. But if those alien bastards breach our hull before we reach critical mass, we'll take half the system with us. Through the tactical display, Kane watched the battle's horrific mathematics unfold. His fighter squadrons were being systematically destroyed. Brave pilots dying in flashes of superheated metal and screaming atmosphere. Lieutenant Commander Nomura's Phantom Squadron had been reduced to 3 survivors, their Wraith fighters limping back toward the carrier on failing engines, while Harvester drones swarmed around them, like metallic vultures. But the Velthari were paying a price for their aggression. The Prometheus's defensive batteries had turned space into a graveyard of alien corpses, biomechanical hulls leaking fluorescent ichor that crystallized in the void. War Prime Velthic's flagship was a burning wreck, its command sections carved open by human plasma weapons that had boiled the occupants alive in their own shells. New contact emerging from Quantum Fold. Navigation Officer Vast screamed, "It's Jesus Christ. It's massive." The Brood Mother's true form materialized at the edge of Kithara's gravity well, a living planet wrapped in tentacles that stretched across light minutes of space. Her reproductive organs pulsed with bioluminescent activity, already beginning the process that would transform the system's dead worlds into nurseries. For the next generation of Velthari, the sight of her triggered primal terror in every human nervous system, an evolutionary response to predators that hunted by consuming their prey from the inside out. So, her voice whispered across all frequencies, the mammals choose extinction over servitude. How disappointingly predictable. One of her lesser tentacles, itself larger than most human battleships, swept through a formation of Wraith fighters. The organic appendage simply absorbed the interceptors, their hulls dissolving as they were pulled into digestive chambers that began breaking them down. At the molecular level, the pilot's final screams echoed across the comm channels, cut short as acid consumed their life support systems. Commander Corvin felt something break inside her chest as she watched good men and women die. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy build up in that thing's primary weapon clusters. Whatever it's planning to do." The Brood Mother's attack silenced her. Streams of weaponized genetic material erupted from her neural spines, biological projectiles that sought out human vessels and began rewriting their molecular structure on contact. The destroyer used Vindictive was caught in the barrage, its titanium still hull transforming into living tissue that pulsed with alien intelligence. "My ship," Captain Torres screamed as his command vessel became something obscene, its human crew absorbed into a collective organism that served the Velthari's reproductive cycle. "They're turning us into," his transmission cut to static as the Vindictive completed its transformation, now a tumor of corrupted human technology that turned its weapons on former allies. 60 seconds to singularity formation, Volkov reported from engineering. "But that bioship is moving to intercept. If she reaches us before we achieve critical mass, she won't," Kane said with quiet finality. "All remaining fighters, form up on the Prometheus' starboard side. We're going to punch through her defensive screen and deliver our gift personally." The surviving members of humanity's fighter squadrons rallied to their admiral's call, their battered Wraith interceptors forming a spear point of human fury. Squadron leader Volkov led the charge, his fighters hull scarred by acid burns and plasma scoring, but his weapons still functional. "This is for every human child they murdered," he transmitted on all frequencies. "This is for Kithara Prime." The desperate charge cut through the Velthari defensive formations like a blade through flesh. Human fighters died by the dozens, their sacrificed buying precious seconds for the Prometheus to close distance with the Brood Mother. The carrier's hull began to fracture under the strain of containing a nascent black hole. Stellar energies bleeding through cracks in the neutronium armor, but they'd gotten close enough. Singularity at 95%, Volkov reported. Containment field collapse in 10 seconds. The Brood Mother's ancient intelligence finally recognized the threat, her massive form writhing as she attempted to retreat to a safe distance. But she was too large, too slow, and the humans had waited long for this moment of vengeance for humanity, Admiral Kane whispered, and triggered the Prometheus's final gift to the galaxy. The controlled singularity collapsed into itself, taking the carrier and everything within a light-second radius with it. The resulting explosion turned the brood mother's screams into a symphony of justice that echoed across dimensions, her death throes visible from neighboring star systems. But in the depths of Kythera's sun, something else was stirring something. The dying Velthari fleet had never imagined humanity would dare to build. The Prometheus's destruction created a brief singularity that consumed the brood mother, and 37 Velthari vessels in a cascade of twisted space-time and screaming gravity. But the explosion also triggered something the aliens couldn't have anticipated: a resonance cascade in Kythera's stellar core that awakened humanity's true secret weapon. From the star's nuclear heart, 6 more carriers emerged: the UES Helios, Solar Wrath, Stellar Fury, Corona, Flare, and Supernova, each one a testament to human engineering pushed beyond all rational limits. The Ghost Fleet had been waiting in the star's core. For 8 months, their crews sustained in cryogenic suspension, while automated systems fed on nuclear fire. As they burst from the stellar corona like ancient gods of war, their hulls glowed with absorbed stellar energy, and their fighter bays disgorged thousands of interceptors. Fleet Admiral Elizabeth Kainrath's younger sister and architect of humanity's stellar warfare doctrine stood on the bridge of the Helios, her neural interface connecting her directly to all 6 carriers' tactical systems. Through cybernetic implants that replaced half her brain, she processed battlefield data at superhuman speeds, calculating casualty rates and victory probabilities with the cold precision of a machine. The Velthari fleet is in disarray, reported Captain Marcus Steele from the Solar Wrath. They've lost their command structure and their brood mother. 59 vessels remaining, but they're regrouping around the colony transports. Good, Kane replied, her augmented voice carrying harmonics that spoke of barely contained fury. Let them huddle around their civilians. It'll make the slaughter more efficient. The Velthari survivors, led by Subprime Kethaval aboard the wounded dreadnought Murthic, faced an impossible tactical situation. The human carriers had emerged from a stellar environment that should have been instantly lethal, their fighter complements outnumbering his remaining forces 3-1. Worse, the humans were broadcasting on all frequencies, their transmission a mixture of military doctrine and primal rage. This is Fleet Admiral Kane to all Velthari vessels. Her voice cut through space like a blade. You came to our system to breed, to turn our dead worlds into nurseries for your spawn. But you made one critical error. You forgot that humans are the galaxy's apex predators. Now you'll learn why we earned that designation. The Ghost Fleet's fighters swarmed toward the Velthari formation in a coordinated assault that turned the void into a killing field. Commander Zerino Mora, one of the few survivors from the Prometheus, led Shadow Squadron in her replacement Wraith Interceptor, her weapon systems linked to her fighter's AI. For maximum kill efficiency, Shadow Squadron, this is no Mora, she transmitted, watching her targeting computer acquire locks on 17 enemy fighters. Remember, they wanted to use us as incubators. Show them what humans do to things that threaten our reproductive cycle. The resulting battle was unlike anything the galaxy had witnessed. Human fighters moved with the coordination of a single organism, their pilots linked through quantum communication rays that allowed them to share targeting data in real time. Velthari harvester drones found themselves outmaneuvered by interceptors that anticipated their movements before they made them. Human weapons striking with surgical precision that turned organic holes into expanding clouds of bioluminescent death. But the Velthari weren't defenseless. Subprime Kethaval ordered his bioships to release their spore carriers' living weapons that sought out human fighters and attempted to infect them with parasitic organisms designed to take control of their pilots' nervous systems. The result was a form of combat that violated the sanity of any observer. As human interceptors fought battles against their own corrupted wingmen, Lieutenant Jake Morrison felt his race shudder as spore pods attached to his hull, their organic drilling systems seeking his life support intakes. Through his cockpit's reinforced viewport, he could see the parasites beginning to bloom, their flower-like structures already releasing psychoactive compounds designed to make him receptive to Velthari control. Morrison to control. I've got bugs in my life support, he screamed, fighting to maintain consciousness as alien pheromones flooded his cockpit. They're trying to turn me into one of them. Negative on extraction, Morrison. Came no Morris' cold reply. You know the protocol. Don't let them take you alive. Morrison's hand moved to his fighter's self-destruct switch, but the parasites had already begun affecting his motor functions. Through the expanding haze of alien influence, he could feel something else taking control of his thoughts, something that whispered promises of unity and shared consciousness. If he would just surrender his individual identity, I can hear them, he whispered. They're not evil. They're just trying to survive, just like us. Maybe we could. His transmission ended in a flash of superheated plasma, as No More's fighter put a torpedo through his cockpit. She killed her own wingman rather than let him be turned into an enemy asset. The cold mathematics of survival overriding any emotional considerations. Shadow Squadron. Sound off, she commanded, watching Morrison's fighter disintegrate in her rear display. Anyone showing signs of infection gets a mercy killing. We don't leave our people for the enemy to use. The battle raged for 6 hours. Human and Velthari vessels dying in explosions that briefly outshone Kithara's star. The carriers Corona and Flare were lost when Velthari bioships managed to ram them, the alien vessels' death throes releasing clouds of digestive enzymes that ate through human armor like acid through flesh. But their sacrifice allowed the surviving carriers to position themselves for the killing blow. All ships concentrate fire on the colony transports, Admiral Kane ordered, her voice carrying the weight of species-level hatred. I want every Velthari egg and larva in this system reduced to component atoms. The coordinated barrage turned the alien colony ships into expanding nebulae of organic matter and screaming atmosphere. Millions of Velthari young died in the space of heartbeats, their genetic potential snuffed out by weapons that channeled the power of stars. The surviving adult Velthari, watching their species' future burn in the void, finally understood what they faced. Humanity didn't just fight wars, they fought for extinction events. Subprime Kethaval watched his species' future die in the void. Millions of larvae and eggs reduced to expanding clouds of organic matter by human weapons. That showed no mercy for the young or innocent. The colony ship's destruction triggered something primal in every surviving Veltharia biological imperative that overrode tactical considerations and transformed them into instruments of pure vengeance. All vessels, final protocol. He chittered into his comm system, his mandibles dripping with bioluminescent rage. If we cannot claim this system for the swarm, then we ensure no species can. Activate the world killers from the belly of each remaining Velthari dreadnought. Biological weapons emerged that violated several dozen interstellar treaties and the basic principles of civilized warfare. The world killers were living viruses the size of frigates, capable of consuming entire planets and converting their mass into reproductive material. They've been held in reserve as a final deterrent, but facing complete extinction. Kethaval was prepared to render Kithara's system uninhabitable for the next million years. Fleet Admiral Kane watched the viral weapons deploy through her tactical display, her cybernetic implants calculating their trajectory toward the system's inner planets. The mathematics were terrifying. If even one world killer reached a planet with an intact ecosystem, it would begin a cascade that would consume every organic molecule in the system. All carriers, intercept course for the world killers, she ordered. I don't care if we have to ram those things, they don't reach the planets. The UES Stellar Fury was closest to the viral swarm, its Captain Commander Diana Cross ordering her ship into a collision course that would turn her vessel into a kinetic projectile. Her crew of 2-0 didn't question the order. They'd all volunteered for a mission with no expected survivors, and dying to save unborn human colonies seemed like an acceptable end. Stellar Fury to Fleet Command, Cross transmitted as her carrier accelerated toward the alien bioweapons. We're going to punch a hole in their formation. Use the opening to get through to their command ships. The carrier struck the world killer swarm at a significant fraction of light speed. Its neutronium hull designed to survive stellar conditions proving equally effective at destroying biological weapons. The collision vaporized both the Stellar Fury and 6 viral weapons, creating a gap in the alien formation that the remaining human vessels exploited with ruthless efficiency. But Cross's sacrifice revealed something that chilled every human soul in the system. The world killers weren't just weapons, they were sentient. As they died, they broadcast screams across all frequencies, the death cries of living beings that had been bred and modified for the sole purpose of consuming worlds. The Velthari hadn't just created biological weapons, they created a slave species that knew its purpose was to die destroying other forms of life. My God, whispered Captain Steele from the Solar Wrath. Those things are screaming. They're actually screaming. The revelation triggered something in the human psyche that transcended military doctrine. These weren't just enemy weapons, they were victims of Velthari genetic manipulation, living beings condemned to exist only to spread death. The knowledge transformed the battle from a military engagement into something approaching a mercy killing. Commander Nomura, now leading the combined fighter squadrons from her battered Wraith Interceptor, opened fire on a cluster of world killers, with weapons configured for minimal pain rather than maximum damage. Her plasma torpedoes burned through their organic hulls with surgical precision, ending their tortured existence as quickly as possible. All squadrons, targeted strikes only. She broadcast, "These things are as much victims as weapons. Make it quick." But the Velthari weren't finished. As their world killers died in flashes of merciful plasma, Kethaval ordered his surviving vessels into a final, desperate gambit. They would ram the human carriers, using their ships' biomechanical hulls as massive kinetic weapons. That would crack the enemy vessels open like eggs. The dreadnought Murthic led the charge, its wounded hull bleeding ichor as it accelerated toward the UES Helios. Kethaval stood on his bridge, watching human fighters swarm around his ship like angry insects, their weapons carving through armor that had been grown rather than forged for the swarm. He shrieked as his ship's final moments approached. For the eggs that will never hatch. Admiral Kane watched the alien dreadnought approach through her tactical display, calculating intercept vectors and casualty projections. The Murthic was massive enough to cripple her flagship even in its wounded state. But she had one final card to play, a weapon system that turned the very concept of ramming attacks into a suicide pact. Engineering, prepare for stellar core ejection, she ordered. If they want to ram us, they can ram a miniature sun. The Helios's experimental weapons array discharged a controlled burst of stellar plasma directly at the approaching Velthari vessel. The superheated material, containing temperatures and pressures that existed only in stellar cores, struck the Murthica's biomechanical hull and began converting it into its constituent atoms. Kethaval's final transmission was a scream of pain and fury that echoed across dimensional barriers, his consciousness dissolving as his ship became part of an expanding plasma cloud. The destruction of the Velthari flagship broke the remaining alien forces, their coordinated attack dissolving into individual vessels fleeing toward the system's edge. But humanity wasn't interested in survivors. All ships, pursue course. Admiral Kane ordered, her voice carrying the finality of a death sentence. No Velthari vessel leaves this system. They came here to breed, to turn our dead into nurseries for their spawn. Today, they learned that some species should never be threatened. The Ghost Fleet pursued the fleeing aliens through the outer system, their weapons turning space into a graveyard of biomechanical corpses and screaming atmosphere. The Battle of Kithara was entering its final phase, and only one species would survive to tell the tale. The last Velthari vessel died at the edge of Kithara's heliosphere, its biomechanical hull cracking open like a rotten egg distilled by a luminescent ichor. Across the void, war drone Zethril, the final survivor of an invasion force that had numbered nearly 100,000, transmitted his species' death song into the quantum foam. Before Admiral Kane's fighters reduced his ship to expanding plasma, the Ghost Fleet hung motionless in the aftermath, their hulls scarred by acid burns and plasma scoring. Their crews mourning friends who had died to ensure that humanity's children would never face the horror of Velthari breeding protocols. Of the 6 carriers that had emerged from Kithara's star, only 3 remain operational. The Stellar Fury and Corona were expanding debris fields, their crews' sacrifice remembered in the tactical logs that would eventually reach Earth Command. Fleet Admiral Elizabeth Kane stood on the Helios's observation deck, watching search and rescue teams comb through the wreckage for survivors. Her cybernetic implants processed casualty reports with mechanical precision. 8,000 human dead, 200 fighters lost, the carriers destroyed. The numbers were acceptable by military standards, but each statistic represented someone who would never see Earth's blue skies again. Admiral, Commander Nomura's voice crackled through the comm system. We've confirmed total elimination of Velthari forces. No survivors, no escape pods, no quantum communication signatures. The system is quiet, quiet. The word carried weight that transcended its simple meaning. For 8 months, Kithara had been a tomb, its 300 million human colonists reduced to atomic dust by alien weapons designed to cause maximum suffering. Now it was quiet in a different way, the silence of justice served, of predators removed from the ecosystem, of a star system that would belong to humanity's children and their children's children. Captain Marcus Steele approached from the tactical station, his uniform torn and bloodstained from the battle's intensity. "Ma'am, we're receiving priority transmission from Earth Command. They want a full report on Operation Sunburst, and they're asking about your brother." Kane's expression didn't change, but her cybernetic implants registered elevated stress indicators. Admiral Ralph Kane had died with the Prometheus, his sacrifice enabling the Ghost Fleet's emergence from their stellar hiding place. The Singularity, weapon that consumed the Brood Mother, had been his final gift to humanity, a demonstration that some species would rather die than submit to predators. "Tell Earth Command that Admiral Kane died as he lived ensuring humanity's survival," she said quietly. "His sacrifice, and that of every crew member aboard the Prometheus, made victory possible. Their names will be remembered, but the victory came with a price that extended beyond casualties." The World Killer's dying screams had been recorded by every sensor ray in the system, transmitted across quantum communication networks to xenobiologists throughout human space. The revelation that the Velthari had bred sentient weapons, living beings, whose only purpose was to consume worlds, would reshape humanity's understanding of warfare itself. Dr. Ellen Avask, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, approached with a data pad that trembled in her hands. "Admiral, preliminary analysis of the World Killer remains shows something unprecedented. They weren't just biological weapons, they were a slave species, genetically modified from some original form we can't identify. The Velthari had been using them for thousands of years, breeding them specifically to feel pain when they weren't destroying ecosystems. The implications staggered every human who understood them. The Velthari hadn't just been conquerors, they'd been creators of suffering on a scale that transcended individual cruelty. They'd engineered entire species to exist in perpetual agony. Their biology designed around the concept that pain was a tool for ensuring compliance. "Ma'am," Steele added, consulting his own tactical display, "we're also detecting something else. Quantum signatures in the deep system that match Velthari technology, but they're different, older, like archaeological sites." Admiral Kane's enhanced processing capabilities began correlating the data, drawing connections that painted a horrifying picture. They've been here before. This isn't their first attempt to colonize Kithara. They've been testing this system for decades, centuries. The search teams confirmed her suspicions within hours. Hidden in asteroid fields and dead moons throughout the system, they found the remains of previous Velthari expeditions' test sites, where the aliens had experimented with converting human technology into biological weapons. Prototype nurseries designed to process captured colonists into reproductive material. At worst of all, evidence that some humans had been taken alive for genetic experimentation. Commander Nomura, leading a reconnaissance team to the largest archaeological site, transmitted images that would haunt human nightmares for generations. "Admiral, you need to see this. They weren't just planning to breed here, they were planning to create hybrid weapons. Human Velthari crossbreeds designed for infiltration." The discovery triggered something primal in every human nervous system, an evolutionary response to the ultimate violation of species boundaries. The Velthari hadn't just wanted to kill humanity, they'd wanted to corrupt it, to turn human genetic material into tools for their expansion. The knowledge transformed the battle's aftermath. From military victory into something approaching religious purification. "Signal all ships," Admiral Kane ordered, her voice carrying harmonics that spoke of species-level rage. "Full sterilization. Protocol. I want every Velthari genetic signature in this system reduced to constituent atoms. Nothing survives. Nothing remains." The Ghost Fleet's weapons arrays, still charged with stellar energy, turned the archaeological sites into brief suns. Each alien installation died in nuclear fire, their biological components vaporized so completely that not even quantum traces remained. The process took 18 hours, but when it was finished, Kithara's system was cleaner than it had been since its formation. 3 days later, the first human colony ships arrived, families who had volunteered to settle a system paid for in blood and sanctified by sacrifice. Admiral Kane watched them from the Helios's observation deck, children's faces pressed against viewports as they gazed at worlds that would become their homes. "They'll grow up knowing what we did here," she said to no one in particular. "They'll know that when monsters came to consume their future, humanity reached into the heart of a star and pulled out the tools of their own salvation." Commander Nomura joined her at the viewport. Both women watching civilian transports begin their approach to Kithara Prime's orbiting reconstruction platforms. Think they'll understand the cost? They better, Kane replied, because somewhere in the galaxy, there are other predators watching, other species that think humans are prey. When they come in, they will come. Our children need to remember that we didn't survive this long. By being reasonable, the Helios began its final orbit of Kithara's star, the nuclear furnace that had hidden humanity's deadliest weapons now, serving as the light that would warm human homes. In the stellar core, where the Ghost Fleet had waited for 8 months, new construction had already begun. Orbital platforms that would use the star's energy to power humanity's expansion into the galaxy's most hostile regions. The Velthari had claimed the star system, but they'd never bothered to look inside the sun itself. That oversight had cost them their species, their future, and their place in a galaxy that was rapidly learning to fear the creativity of human warfare. Admiral Kane's final log entry, transmitted to Earth Command and archived in the Terran military database, became required reading for every officer in the human fleet. The enemy believed they understood us. They saw our cities and assumed we were builders, not destroyers. They saw our art and assumed we were creators, not killers. They saw our compassion and assumed we were weak, not strategically patient. Today, they learned that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our courage, it's our willingness to become the monsters our children need us to be. Let the galaxy take note. We will hide in the hearts of stars if necessary, and emerge only to visit extinction upon those who threaten our young. This is the human way. This is why we survive. The Ghost Fleet departed Kithara system 6 months later, leaving behind a thriving human colony and a star that would forever serve as a monument to the price of underestimating humanity's capacity for both creation and annihilation. In the depths of space, other species detected the quantum signatures of the battle and began revising their expansion plans accordingly. Humanity had announced its presence in the galaxy not with words or diplomacy, but with the screams of a predator species dying in nuclear fire. The message was received, understood, and filed under species too dangerous to provoke. The children of Kithara Prime would grow up safe, their laughter echoing through cities built on worlds where monsters had once planned to breed. And in the star that warmed their faces, humanity's weapons waited patiently for the next species foolish enough to threaten what humans held dear. The Ghost Fleet had returned to the void, but the precedent was set, threatened humanity's future, and faced the fury of a species that had learned to weaponize the forces that birthed galaxies themselves.